I'm taking care of a local farm for a few weeks. They left me a strange set of rules. Part 2. 6 a.m. came all too early. The alarm blared in my ears and I forced myself out of bed, groaning. The sun had just crested over the hill, and the sky was lit with the pale gray of dawn. I could hear the rooster crowing already. I looked out the window, scanned the farm, but everything looked normal. All the sunflowers were facing halfway towards me, in direction of the rising sun. The cornfield was still. The chickens were milling about the coop, pecking the ground. I went downstairs, grabbed the bag of feed I'd never put away, and went out to the coop. The chickens were probably the only part of the farm I liked. The fat little hens ran towards me as I poured the food onto the ground. Making happy noises, they pecked it up. I locked the gate and started over the hill, towards the shed, to get the goat feed. That's when I heard it. Oink! I stopped in my tracks. The Gershon's note said they didn't own any pigs. Oink! The note didn't say anything about avoiding the pigs, though. So I was free to go fetch the goat feed. Right. I started walking again, up the hill. Oink! And that's when I realized there was something off about the sound. It almost sounded human? Like a person saying oink instead of an actual animal sound. For a second I had a weird mental image of a naked man covered in his own filth, crouching on the ground, saying oink over and over. Oink! I shook my head and continued up the hill. And when I got to the top, I saw the source of the noise, a fat, pink pig standing in the grass. I let out a breath of relief. See? It's just an ordinary pig. I passed the pig, ignoring it completely, and opened the shed. Put the chicken feed back. Pulled out the goat feed. Started back up the hill. I stopped dead as my eyes fell on the pig. Its face. It almost looked human. Its fleshy, pink snout was shorter than it should be. Its curled little ears sat low and flat on its head. And its eyes, they weren't round and beady, but almond-shaped like a person's, with dark pupils that stared up at me in a way that suggested intelligence. The feed bag fell out of my hands. I stumbled back, but the pig didn't advance. It just stared at me with its human eyes. I backed away, keeping my eyes on it. Slowly walked around it so that I was going back towards the house. When I got over the hill, and that horrible little face was finally out of my sight, I whipped around and broke into a run. What the fuck was that? I panted to myself as I locked the front door behind me. Not knowing what else to do, I pulled out my phone and called the police. But when they picked up, I wasn't sure what to say.
I started.
Found a pig that doesn't look like a pig. On the farm. The Gershon's farm. Did you touch the pig? The officer cut in. What? Did you have any contact with the pig, any at all? No. Good. We'll send an officer out to deal with it. 15 minutes later, I saw a police car pull up the driveway. They asked me where I'd seen it, then told me to stay inside. I went over to the window and watched them walk up the hill, then disappear. A minute passed, then a shrill squeal erupted in the silence. 5 minutes later, the officers reappeared, carrying a large black plastic bag that swung with each step. Hey, hey! I called out as they headed for the cruiser. What was that thing? The officers glanced at each other. Rabies, the female officer said, while the male stuffed the bag into the back seat. A bunch of rabid pigs have been showing up in this area. Gonna send it off to get tested. Good thing you didn't touch it. Before I could ask her more questions, she hopped into the driver's side. And then they were gone. I stared out the window, utterly perplexed. Why didn't the Gershons tell me to stay away from the pigs? After the debacle with the pig, I decided to take it easy. I made a wholesome breakfast, read a few chapters of the thriller I was working through, and called my boyfriend. Around 11 a.m. though, I realized I'd forgotten to stock the farm stand. It was still technically morning, so I ran out into the field, filled my hod with zucchini and tomatoes, and ran down the driveway as fast as I could without spilling any of the produce. But as the little farm stand came into view, I saw that there was already someone waiting. I checked my watch, 11:49 a.m. "I'm so sorry," I breathed as I spread the produce out on the wooden table. I was supposed to get this out earlier, but there was a pig, and something made me stop rambling. I glanced up to see that the person standing there was a little odd. He was an old man, probably about 6 feet tall, and very thin. He wore, surprisingly, a crisp black suit and an old-timey bowler hat in the sweltering heat. He was smiling at me, but his teeth were deeply yellow and crooked, and his eyes were sunken back in his skull. Nothing unnatural about him, just a slightly creepy-looking old guy, but in a way, he reminded me of the creepy dudes from that one Buffy the Vampire episode where they take away everyone's voices. "So, what are you looking for today?" I asked, when he didn't move to take any of the produce. "The Gershons aren't here?" I shook my head. "Won't be back for 2 weeks. He said, thoughtfully. "They didn't tell me they were leaving." "Oh, you know them?" He let out a small chuckle. "You could say that." I waited for him to either take produce or leave, but he didn't do either. He just stood there, looking at me. The way his blue eyes cut into mine made a chill run down my spine. It wasn't a predatory or sexual stare. It felt more like he was examining me, studying me, trying to read every tilt of my head and blink of my eyes. It made me extremely uncomfortable. "So, are you interested in any of this?" "The tomatoes looked really good today," I said, trying to not sound nervous. "Or if you're looking for something else, I can go pick it for you. Only the Gershons can provide what I'm looking for." "Okay, well, I'm going back up to the farm. If you change your mind, the prices are listed on the whiteboard, and you just leave the money in the box." I shot him a fake smile, turned around, and headed up the hill as quickly as I could without seeming weird. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Emily." I never told him my name. The smartest thing would have been to run. But instead, I turned around. He wasn't chasing me. He was still standing at the farm stand, 10 yards from me. "I wouldn't trust the Gershons if I were you," he called out. Then he turned on his heel and strode away. As I watched him go, I realized there wasn't any car parked at the bottom of the driveway. He just turned onto the old country road and walked away. I watched him until he rounded the bend and disappeared from sight. I retreated into the house, checked all the locks, and decided I would spend the rest of the day inside, at least until it was time to feed the animals and stock the farm stand again. Stay tuned for part 3 of the story. Now, let's move on to the next story. I'm a freshman at a small university. I found out why we need to follow the rules. My next encounter happened just 3 days later, and unfortunately for me, it wasn't nearly as tame as my run-in with Clarissa. I found myself in the common area of my floor, studying for an upcoming exam. Yeah, I had my first exam in my 3rd week of college. Ridiculous? Absolutely. But honestly, I expected nothing less from a school as strange as Sutherland. I pushed myself to stay up cramming well into the night. Normally, I'd keep the academics to my dorm room, but Josh had a girl over, so that meant I had to make other arrangements. After a couple hours, I could feel my eyelids growing heavy, but that wasn't anything a little caffeine couldn't fix, right? I sipped intermittently from my Red Bull, trying to soak in as much information as I could. But at some point, I must have drifted off to sleep. My eyes shot open. I yawned, stretching my arms over my head. How long was I out for? I thought to myself, tapping my phone screen. My heart plummeted into my toes when I read the time it displayed. 2:12 a.m. No. This can't be happening. I didn't even bother gathering my study materials. I bolted to my room as the lights began to flicker. I frantically searched my pockets until I came to a nauseating realization. I'd forgotten my student ID in the room. That was my only way in. Josh, open the damn door. I shrieked at the top of my lungs, futilely pounding my fists against the hard, wooden exterior. But Josh didn't hear me. I glanced to my left, and I nearly passed out when I drank in the scene before me. The lights were going out one by one, pitch-black darkness growing closer and closer with every blown bulb. It was like a cloud, one that swallowed up any surrounding light and snuffed it out. And in the midst of that endless black void, two glowing, hungry eyes. That was it. I couldn't wait around on the off chance that Josh might wake up. I darted to the exit at the end of the hall, praying that the janitor, or whatever the hell that thing was, wouldn't catch up to me. I slammed my weight into the door, and it didn't budge. I tried again and again, but my attempts were fruitless. Dread swallowed me like a python. Someone had locked us in. I flew to the door closest to me, screaming at the top of my lungs, praying that by some miracle I wouldn't end up like that student in the article. The darkness was closing in. There were only 5 light bulbs left between me and it. 5, 4, 3. The entity was so close that it could almost reach out and grab me. I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting to be yanked into a sea of black at any moment, never to be seen again. And then it happened. I was dragged backward by the collar of my shirt. I curled up into a ball, waiting for razor-sharp claws to dig into my flesh. But they never did. To my utter shock, when I opened my eyes, I wasn't shrouded by some dark, malevolent haze of doom. No, it was bright. I hesitantly glanced up. Bryson stood above me, arms crossed. By the look on his face, I could tell that he was not happy to see me. "You didn't read the rules, did you?" he growled, his spiteful stare unwavering. I did, I swear." I managed to croak out. "You obviously didn't if the janitor almost turned you into minced meat." "No, wait. It was Josh, wasn't it? He didn't explain the rules to you. That fucking asshole. Trying to make me look like the bad guy, huh? Next time I see that stupid prick, I'm gonna smash his damn teeth in." Bryson's face was redder than a fire engine. I could practically see the steam wafting from his ears. Actually, it was my own fault. I was studying for an exam, and I must have nodded off in the common area. "My bad," I confessed, rubbing the back of my neck. "Oh no, I'm not believing that for a second. If you were really studying, then where are your textbooks? Or at least some notes from class? Are you telling me that you were going over the lecture in your mind? Is that it?" I sighed, remembering my abandoned spiral and chemistry textbook. I left my stuff behind. "I wasn't thinking," I admitted, averting my gaze. "Ha! That's a good $95 down the drain. Sorry to break it to you, but the janitor isn't a huge fan of literature," Bryson snickered. He looked almost pleased with himself, like he'd just told the funniest joke anyone had ever heard. "Damn. That really sucks," I muttered dejectedly. "There went all my alcohol savings for the semester." "Shit happens. Here, get off the ground. You can sleep in my room tonight. We won't be able to leave for over an hour," Bryson offered, extending a hand. I gladly accepted it as he hoisted me up. "Thanks, man. Geez, you get this whole room to yourself?" I asked, surveying my surroundings. It was at least double the size of my own room, complete with a kitchenette and 2 full-sized beds. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit envious. "Yeah. The other RA for our floor dropped out last week. The sheets are clean, if that's what you're worried about." No, I was just wondering." "This is good," I replied, plopping onto the bed. I instantly melted into the mattress like butter in a frying pan. Turning out the lights. "Night," Bryson said, plunging the room into darkness. "Night, and thanks for saving me. I was just doing my job. Don't start to think you're something special." I tried my best to drift off to sleep. In a bed that comfortable, it should have been a piece of cake. But something was gnawing at my brain. A little voice in the back of my head that was itching to know more about my savior. A voice that I should have ignored. "Hey Bryson, you still awake?" I whispered. I felt giddy, like a child at a slumber party. "What?" "Well, that was rude. I was just wondering something. I mean, like, if that's okay. I get it if you dash. Just spit it out already, damn. I'm trying to get some shut-eye." "Right. Sorry." "Why do you wear the same clothes all the time? Like, every time I see you you're wearing the same black shirt and ripped jeans." "Nothing wrong with it, just curious." A long, uncomfortable silence followed. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I was seriously beginning to regret asking. "I can't tell you." I furrowed my brows. He couldn't tell me? But why? "It's okay, man. No judgment, I dash. Just drop it, all right?" "Yeah, sorry." I drifted off feeling completely unsatisfied. I still got the sense that something was up with Bryson, and now that I had him alone, I couldn't get a single peep out of him. Still, I wasn't going to throw in the towel. I was determined to get to the bottom of it. Looking back now, I probably should have left him alone. I awoke the next day feeling refreshed. That cushy mattress really worked wonders. I stretched my arms above my head and yawned. "Morning, Bryson." "Oh." I glanced over to Bryson's empty bed. It suddenly felt like I was doing something wrong. Like I was trespassing in a restricted area. I leapt up and threw on my socks and shoes. I nearly beelined for the door, but I stopped dead in my tracks halfway there. My eyes landed on a note glaring at me from the kitchen counter. "Steal anything and I'll gut you like a fish. You're welcome for saving your sorry ass." Damn. Straight to the point. Best to be on my way before. Wait. An idea flickered to life in my head. A devilish grin inched across my face as I turned away from the door. I had a few minutes to spare before I needed to get ready for class. And Bryson never told me not to snoop. I began surveying the room. If I was hiding something, where would I do it? Though it was bigger than my own room, there still weren't many places to stash evidence. Not to mention, Bryson kept things clean as a whistle. That in itself had left me gobsmacked. I'd thought his room would have been filthier than a pigsty. I zeroed in on the first place anyone would think of, under the bed. I wasn't really expecting to find anything. I mean, it was only a hunch. Bryson could have just been an eccentric kid who had a fetish for wearing the same smelly clothes every day for all I knew. But, aside from all the cobwebs and candy wrappers, I did manage to find something of interest while fishing around under there. A scrapbook. Who keeps scrapbooks anymore? "These things are ancient," I murmured, sitting crisscross applesauce as I flipped open the cover. Dozens of photographs greeted me. Most of them were grainy, and I could tell that they were probably taken with a cheap Polaroid camera. I carefully slid one out of its sleeve and inspected it closer. My eyes grew wide as dinner plates when I fully soaked in its contents. The photograph depicted 3 young men with their arms thrown around each other and huge grins stamped on their faces. All of them appeared to be around my age. Their clothes and hairstyles were all outdated, though. One of them even had frosted tips. Underneath the picture, written in black marker, was a caption that read, "Jerry, Randall, and Bryson, Fall 1998.